Yesterday we improved the way the to-do items were displayed in the command line. You remember there was a break line between the to-do items. So I showed you two ways to remove that break line. One way was to create a list comprehension. So that is a list comprehension. The list comprehension went over each of the items and it removed that break line. So the \n is a break line. And that is the syntax for a list comprehension. But then I also showed you a better way to remove that break line without having to create a list comprehension. And that was to remove the break line using a strip method. So that meant we didn't have to iterate over the items in a list comprehension, since we are already iterating here. So why not doing two things in one loop? So here we print out those items, but before we print them out, why not just stripping them from the break lines? So that was what we did yesterday. Often there are different ways to do something, but as a programmer, slowly you will understand which way to pick. You'll see which makes the code more readable and which adds redundancy to your code. And redundancy is not a good thing. So you'll get that with experience. Yep, let's move on to the next videos of today. I'll see you in the next ones. Hey, welcome back. This video is one of those videos where we don't improve the program output, but we improve the code. What do I mean by that? We will make the code more readable, more efficient. So nothing on the output will change. What we will do exactly is we're going to use a better way to handle files. So for example, here we are opening a file in read mode. Then we read the lines of that text file. We store the lines in a list and then we close the file. But this can be done in a better way using the with context manager. So from this, we're going to use with, and here we place this function. So I copy that, I place it in here. And then this variable will go at the end using the as keywords, as file, and then you use a colon which denotes that the next line will be indented. So this is indented under this with block. So this is a block and everything that goes underneath it is indented. So now what do we want to do now? Well, perhaps we want to read lines from that file. So whatever you want to do with that file, you want to write it here. In our case, it is todos equal to file.readlines. So this one, I'll just copy it and paste it here. And that's it. You don't need to close the file, and that is the benefit of this with context manager. So I'll delete that line. And if you run the code now, you're going to get the same exact output, so nothing will change. So this method also makes sure to avoid some problems with file handling. For example, what will happen here is that the file is open and then even if the program stops for some problems, the file will be closed by this method. But in the other case where we had this file equal to open, file.writelines, if the program stops at this point, then the next line will not be executed. So file.close will not be executed and we will end up with an open file which could cause problems. So this method, this block of code makes sure that that will not happen. So this is always recommended over this. Of course, first I wanted to show you this because you understand the logic better, but then we want to change that. So let's change this other block of code to a with context manager, it would be with that as file, and then that goes in here, and that's it. So delete that. The code also becomes a bit shorter, as you can see. Let's do the same in here with that as file. Do that and delete that. And that's what we have. So let me test this if everything is working fine. So show, that will show what we have so far. Add a new to-do, write, for example, that's a new to-do that I've just added. Show, write is part of the to-do list. So everything is working fine. So we just modified the show, the add case, and also the show case. Now we still haven't implemented the changes in the edit and the complete cases. So these are still not connected to our text file. They are not connected to our actual data. But we will do this in the next video. So I'll see you there. Hey, in this video we will work on the edit and the complete case. So just to refresh your memory, let me show you how these two commands work currently. So first let me just see the list of to-dos and then enter edit as a command. So as soon as we press edit, the program asks us to enter a to-do. So that is the equivalent of this. This line here produces that output. Now, once we enter here a number, for example, if we want to edit number 3, we enter 3 here. So when we enter 3, our program subtracts 1 from 3 because list indexing starts from 0. So if we enter 3 as a user, actually we meant to say 2, the item with index 2, because this has an index of 0, this has an index of 1, this has an index of 2, so play has an index of 2. Therefore we get 2 here. Then what we do is we get a new to-do from the user. So here we go, enter a new to-do, play a game, press enter, and once we entered play a game here, so play a game is part of new to-do, and then we change in the list. So we changed the item with index 2 to that new item. So play will be replaced with play a game. Now if we exit the program, exit, press enter, and then we check to-dos. So if you want to refresh it, reload from disk, no changes are written in the file. Why? Well, because we didn't write any files here, we didn't handle any files. So let's fix that in this video. Now you know that you can use the with context manager, but what exactly do you do here? Do you read or do you edit the file? Well, you do both. First, you want to open the file in read mode. So once you get the number from the user and you subtract 1 from that number, then somewhere here perhaps you want to get the existing list of to-do items. So in here I would get that with context manager and just copy it here. So that will give us the to-dos in a list, the existing to-dos in a list, and then we get the new to-dos here, and then we replace the new to-do in the list. So at this point, the list should have been modified. I can prove that to you by checking with a print function. To-dos. Let me add some extra information. Here is to-dos existing to-dos, and then another function after we modify that to-do list, print. Here is how it will be, and again we print out the to-dos variable and run the program. Edit. So we wanted to edit number 3, and so once I press 3, which corresponds to this line here, then we get printed out this line, and then we enter a new to-do, play the game, press enter, and here is the new list. So play the game is now part of the list. But you see that it's missing a \n. So let's add a \n here. So we want to replace the existing to-do with new to-do plus \n. And then we need to do something with that list. So we need to write that list back to the file. For that we need the write with context manager. So I'm copying that and putting it here at the end. So just before the case complete line, we put that, and perhaps we don't need these lines anymore. So I'll remove that and this print function as well. And that's about the edit case. So I'll run this again. Show, we have these. Edit, let's try number 4. So that is fix. Fix it well. Show, and there we go. Fix it well is now number 4. Exit. Check to make sure in the file, yeah, fix it well is here, so it's working. And let's also implement the complete case, because this is also not connected to our file. So we get the input from the user, that's the index. We remove that index from the list, but we want to get the current list from the file again. So again, we need this 2 lines. So we get the current list, we remove the item with that index from the list, and then we write the list back to the file using that code. So paste it here and let's run. So let's see what we have. Right, then say complete. Which one do you want to complete? 3. Press enter. Show. So play is not there anymore. And let's exit and go to to-dos. And your play has disappeared. If you want to make this complete commands more user-friendly, perhaps you may want to show a message to the user. So I'll write a message f-string, construct an f-string here, and say to do. So we want to tell the user that this to do was removed from the list. So which is the to do? Well, the removed to do, we can get it using list indexing. So we get the number here, the index from the user, and then we get the lists. And before we're removing that to do from the list, we want to access it, to store it in a variable. Removed to do, or you can say to do to remove, because removed to do doesn't make so much sense here, since it has not been removed at this point from the list. Here it is removed actually. So let's say to do to remove is equal to do's number minus 1. Or you could also say create a new variable here, index is equal to number minus 1, so that you don't have to perform this operation 2 times in the code. You just perform it once here, and then you replace this to that variable, and also this to that variable. So that's the beauty of variables. And that will give us the to do to remove, which was play in our case, and then we place that to do in here. And that should do it. So let's run this again. Complete, or let's show first, and then complete. Let's try number 2, shower. We didn't get any output because I forgot to print out the message. So print message, run again, show, complete. So the to-do was completed, but it was not printed out. Complete number 2, and so we get this to-do fix it well was removed from the list. Now you see this break line here. If you want to remove that break line, you want to go back in here and say to-dos.index dot strip, and then goes \n. So does this make sense to you? Well, the idea is that this is a string, right? So the situation here is like this. We have a list, to-dos, you know, item 1, item 2, and so on. So to-dos 1.strip, what you're doing is actually applying the strip method to that string. So that was, just to be clear, you understand this, and that's the final code. So let me run it for one more time. Show, complete, we want to complete number 2 this time, and we get this message, to do right was removed from the list. So that message is printed out correctly. And that finishes this video. Thanks a lot for following. I'll see you later. Hey, welcome back. Let's try some code experiments, try to test things out so that you understand some certain aspects better. So we're working on the with context manager today, and I want you to create a new file and write this code there. This code tries to open this file. The problem is this file does not exist here. There is a file folder, as you see here, files, but there is no docs.txt file. There is a doc.txt file, but there is no docs.txt file. Therefore, whenever I run the script, I'm going to get an error. The error says that the file was not found. And of course, that can be fixed by pointing to the right file path. In my case, it is files/doc.txt. You see, I have this file here. So if you want the code to work, you need that file to exist. In my case, I also need to add these dots in front. As I explained earlier, these dots are useful when the Python file is somewhere in a directory and the external text file is outside of that directory. So in my case, my Python file is inside experiments and the doc.txt file is in files here. This time the code will work fine. There we go, we didn't get any output because we didn't print this out. So that was the first thing I wanted to show you, that file paths need to exist when you open a file in read mode. The next thing I want you to try is I want you to remove this argument. So remove it and keep only the first argument. And run the code. So there are no errors. And of course you can print out the content of the file. And you get the content successfully, so all carrots are to be sliced longitudinally. That's the content of this file. So why is it still working? Well, that's because by default the open function assigns an R value to the mode's argument. So you can open a Python console and check the help for open. Scroll up to the top and you'll see that the mode's argument is by default set to R. So you'll see some programmers just use this version when they want to read a file, and then if they want to write, they use this version with a write argument. So when you want to write a file, then you have to use W. With R, it's up to your personal preference. So not mentioning the argument makes the code shorter, but some would argue that having the argument value there is better because it makes the code more explicit, so you can read the code better as a programmer. For Python it's the same. The next experiment, let's try to print out here anything like hello. Run the code, you get hello printed out, obviously because the with context manager first opens the file and then it executes whatever it finds in here. So the with context manager doesn't actually force you to have a file read method here, but of course you do want to have that. So but my point here is that if you decide to have file read outside the with context manager, so you see I unindented here, this is not inside the with block anymore, so if I run the code now, we're going to get an error. It points to line 3, you can click there, takes you to line 3. In the read method, that's a problem. So we're operating on a closed file because, as I taught you, the with context manager opens the file and then once the block of code ends execution, so once the indented code block ends execution, then the file is closed implicitly. And then the interpreter goes on and executes the other lines. Now notice that this is not a problem with a variable. So the variable still exists. File is a variable and it does exist. But that variable at this point is associated with a closed file. Up to here it is associated with an open file. But now the file is closed, so you cannot read a closed file. That's the idea here. So to fix this, of course, you need to cut that and put it inside the with block. And lastly, the last thing I want you to try is that you already know this, but I wanted to emphasize this, that once you assign the variable to the file read method, then you can use the variable as many times as you want. So you run the scripts and the variable will be printed out as many times as there are print functions in here. This wouldn't be the case though if you had two file.read methods, as I explained earlier. So I also wanted to mention this again. Be careful with this because many people are just confused and they cannot find out why the program doesn't behave as they expected. So in this case we don't get any output. That's because the string is first created in here by the read method, and then the read method is exhausted. So the second time it returns an empty string, because as I explained, the first time the read method reads the string up to here, the content of the text file, it reads it up to here, and then if you execute the read method again, it tries to read whatever is at the end here. So there's nothing always, so that's why you get an empty string. So the second time this outputs an empty string, and the empty string is stored in here, so we are printing out an empty string each time. That's why we get nothing here. That's about the experiments for today. Thanks a lot. Welcome to today's bonus example. We're going to create a daily journal app which behaves like this. So let me demonstrate you the output of the program. The program first asks the user to enter today's date. So let's enter 2022 and 10, maybe 20. You press enter. The program asks you again to rate your mood, the mood you had today from 1 to 10. Let's enter 8, for example, and then you write the thoughts of the day. So let's write something like, it was a good day in general, no big events happened, press enter. That's it. Now if you go to the journal directory which I had created earlier, so you need to create this directory manually, and then inside this a file was generated by Python. So that's the content of our program. So every new day that you execute the program, it will create a new file. So 10 days, 10 files, and each file is going to contain the date of the day as a file name. Yeah, let's write the program. So first of all, we want to ask the user to enter today's date, so we need an input function for that with this string. Next, we ask the user to rate their mood, so another input function. So we've got two variables, date and mood. Then we ask the user again to just write down their thoughts. So yet another input function. I'm writing here, I'm having a \n to create a break line. You saw that when I entered the inputs here as a user, the input was written in the next line. So a break line was created by this \n. By the way, this output was executed from a script which is somewhere here, but I don't want to show the script to you in the beginning. So now we want to recreate that program again. Once we get the inputs, then we want to create a file using that as a name for the file. So let's write with open date. So the file, the actual file path would be something like /journal/ and then the date enclosed in curly quotes, and this would be an F string. So let me close the string here and make it an F string. And these two dots, as you know, are when my Python file is inside an inner directory. In my case, it's inside bonus. So bonus and journal are in the same directory. So the file has to go up one level with these dots and then point to journal. And then date.txt. So this file will be created in write mode. And in the next line, which is indented, we say file.write. What do we write here? So the content would have the rates on top. So that means this would be the mood. And then we don't close the file. We write the journal in the file, or the text, or whatever you call it, so the thoughts of the user. Let's rename it to thoughts, actually. Does make more sense. And yeah, I'll run this script now. So make sure that a journal directory exists and it reflects that path there, journal. I'll delete the existing file, and to run the script, today's date 2022 2010, enter. How do you rate? Let's try 7. Nice day in general. It was fun. Press enter. And let's check journal. So that's the output. Yeah, we're close. 7 is the rate and it's not so well formatted. So we want to have like 1-2 break lines between these two. So in that case, we want to go back to the Python file, and after mood, which is 7 is a string, so it comes as a string from the input function. So basically mood is a string, and if you do mood plus \n, you get 7 \n, but this is the output in the command line. So if you use a print function, \n is printed out as an actual break line. So now we have a break line here. When you just call the expression like that without printing, in the Python console you always get the row string like that. So we can use that expression, or we can also do 2 times that. So we have 2 break lines, 1, 2. So let's say plus 2 times \n. So that is the equivalent of if you set plus \n plus another \n. And so you get the same behavior. You see here and there we have these break lines. So with that we can try the code again, this time with another date, 2022 21/10. Press enter. How do you rate? Try 9 this time. Great day. Press enter. Process finished. A new file was generated, as you see here. And that's the content, as we expected. And that's our final code. So the key point to take here is that the with context manager keeps the file open, and anything that is indented here is working on the opened file. So you can write and write and write text over and over again. Everything will be appended to the text file. So thanks for following this. I'll talk to you later. Hey, today we're going to cover the steps to create and maintain programs. So these will be the steps that we'll be going through over and over again as we create Python program. So you will learn the language in the course, but at the same time you learn the procedure on creating any program. So everything starts with a minimum viable product. So this will be the program you will build, which doesn't have many features, but it does have enough features to attract users which will use it and then give you feedback so that you can add more features based on users' feedback. So you cannot just go crazy with adding lots of features, because some of them will not be needed by users, so you'll be wasting time. So it's better to start simple and release that version of your program. Then you add features to the program. For example, in the program we were building, we started by just allowing the user add to-do items and then show them, and then we added an edit feature. So let's suppose that we had released the program to users, and then they send us emails or something that they want to be able to edit to-do items. So what we do is we go and add an edit feature. Then we might get feedback about problems with the program, so we want to go back to the program and fix those bugs and release an updated version of the program with the bugs fixed. Then once in a while we want to go back to our code and optimize it. For example, for our to-do app, what we've been doing is we changed from file is equal to open and file close to using a with context manager. This doesn't serve the user any purpose, but it makes our code base higher quality, it could make the program faster, and it generally makes the code more readable and easier to manage and extend. And then again, you want to improve features that you have built before, and then fix bugs again, optimize the code, and those are the three main phases which you'll go over and over again as you maintain and improve your program. So in our case, we may go back to the edit feature and improve it, and then we might think of some other code optimization. As we improved this thing, perhaps we found out that some part of the code is not so optimized, so we write that activity down and we do it in the next opportunity we get. Sometimes you might want to give priority to other things. For example, if you have both to optimize the code and you also have to fix the bug, perhaps fixing the bug is more important than optimizing the code. So we'll go through all these phases over and over again through the course, and you'll get better to managing your programs. So thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you later.